Okay, good evening. Welcome back to Avram Avinu. It's nice to be talking about our Zaidi again. You know, Parshas Lech Lecha and Vayera, and it's important for us to revisit it every year because this is who we are. The midas of Avram Avinu and of Yitzchak and Yaakov are wired into us, and when we learn about Avram Avinu, we're really learning about ourselves. So, I want to mention a point about Avram that I think plays out in a lot of different ways in our lives and affects us in a lot of different ways. You know, the Sfarim talk about the contribution that each of the Avos gave to Klal Yisrael. And one of the contributions of Avram Avinu, maybe the contribution of Avram Avinu, is that he was Tchila Legerim. He was the first Ger. And in fact, he's the father of all Gerim. Because we know that every Ger signs their name, Avram, whatever name they take, Avram or whatever other name they take, Ben Avram Avinu. And so does every Gioris. Every Gioris as well is Bas Avram Avinu and Bas Sarah. So Avram Avinu is the first of the Gerim. And the question is, how does that affect us? In other words, this that Avram Avinu is the first Ger, so I'm sure that's very, very inspiring to Gerim. No? That's something, if someone is a Ger or a Gioris, so it's very, very inspiring and special to them that they have this unique connection to Avram Avinu, that Avram Avinu is the first Ger, and they're following in the footsteps of Avram Avinu, and they're identified as children of Avram Avinu. That's very inspiring for Gerim. But what about all the non-Gerim in Klal Yisrael? So we are more similar to Yitzchak in a way, who was born into Yiddishkeit. We say like Noilad b'Kedusha, like he was born with the Kedusha of being a Jew. We're not so similar to Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu found his Yiddishkeit. So how do we understand what we have to gain from the idea that Avram Avinu is Tchila Legerim? What does that have to do with my life? Me having been born from a Jewish father and a Jewish mother, how does it affect me? How does it inspire me? What does it have to do with me that my grandfather, Avram Avinu, was the first Ger? That's what I want to focus on a little bit. In the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha, Hashem tells Avram Avinu to leave home. And he says it in a very wordy way. Hashem tells Avram Avinu, Lech Lecha, me'artzecha, u'mi'moladtecha, u'mi'beis avicha. Go away, leave, Lech Lecha, leave from your land, from your birthplace, from your father's house. That's very descriptive. Could have just said, Lech Lecha el ha'aretz asher areka. Go to the land that I show you. Obviously, if he's going to a new land, he's leaving his land and his birthplace and his father's house. But the Torah still goes through in detail. I want you to leave your land, your birthplace, and your father's house to the land. Go to the land that I will show you. What's the point of specifying all of that? And also, as Mefarshim point out, it seems to be backwards. When you leave home and travel to another, I'm looking at Rivka Bracha, but she never left home. Mi beis avicha you left, but not artzecha or meilatecha, right? But when you leave home, the first thing you leave is beis avicha, is your father's house. You're still in your birthplace as you're traveling out. And then you travel a little further out, you leave the neighborhood or the city of your birth. So then you're doing that. But you still didn't leave your land. And then when you finally out of the country, then you left your land, right? So shouldn't it say, Lech lecha mi beis avicha umi moilatecha umi artzecha? Shouldn't it have said it that way? Leave your father's house, step one. That happens right when you walk out of your father's house. Then leave the place that you were born. Keep going. And then keep going. Leave your land. Why does it say it in this in this backwards way. One more question that I want to bring up about Avraham Avinu, which may seem to be completely irrelevant to this conversation, but I think we'll find that it is relevant. And that is that in this week's Parsha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises Avraham Avinu children. Now, Avraham Avinu was a very elderly man by the time HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised him children. And yet, even though he was, he was unable to have children, and his wife was unable to have children, he was an akar and she was an akara. They were both physically unable. The Mabit talks about this at length. They were physically unable to have children, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him he was going to have children. The pasuk says, "Vehem in Bashem," he believed in Hashem. Vayachshaveha loy tzedakah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu considered it like an act of righteousness that Avraham Avinu believed in Hashem. Now, how did Avraham Avinu know he was going to have children? Do you know how he knew? Because Hashem told him. Do you think if Hashem told you something, you might believe it also? How often have we talked about the fact that one of the hardest things in our life is that we don't hear back from Hashem? Mrs. Feld and I once were having a conversation about how much we wish Hashem would just send a thumbs up emoji. Remember we talked about that once? Sounds like a conversation that we would have, right? Like, you have to daven and plead with Hashem and so on. Imagine if you just came up on your phone, ping, like, got it, like Hashem heard me. But part of the nisayon of our life is that we don't feel that. We have to build our emunah to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is listening to us, even though we don't get any feedback from it. But Avraham Avinu spoke to Hashem. Hashem talked to him. And he heard Hashem tell him that he was going to have children. It doesn't seem like such an amazing zchus that Avraham Avinu had emunah in the one who was speaking to him. So I want to discuss a little bit what it means, Avraham Avinu's emunah, in relation to these other questions. And the approach that I think is very, very, very important here has to do with a bracha in Shemoneh Esrei. There's a bracha that we make in Shemoneh Esrei called Al HaTzadikim. Al HaTzadikim, we daven for tzadikim. We daven for all the special people in Klal Yisrael. And then we include ourselves in it. We try to also be nechlal into the tzadikim, to affiliate, to associate ourselves with tzadikim. So we say Al HaTzadikim, V'al HaChasidim, V'al Ziknei Amcha Beis Yisrael, V'al Pleitas Seifreihem. We talk about all the tzaddik, right? The tzaddikim, the chasidim, the zakenim, the seifrim. We mention all the special Talmidei Chachamim in Klal Yisrael. And then we say V'al Geirei HaTzedek, and on the Geirim, V'oleinu, and us. Now we say and us because there's a special zchus and a special bracha when you attach yourself to tzaddikim. So when you're davening, the Mefarshim say this, that when you're davening about the tzaddikim, so then that shows your chashivas for the tzaddikim and the fact that you feel a certain kesher to tzaddikim because you're davening for them. So then you quickly put in and me because there's a special bracha when we're attached to tzaddikim. So we say ve'oleinu and ourselves. But what the big question on this bracha is what do Geirim have to do with it? I mean, Geirim are very, very special, but this is a bracha for tzaddikim. If a ger is a tzaddik, so they're anyway included, right? And if a ger is not a tzaddik, so what are they doing in the bracha? Like, why specify the Geirim? Now, we assume every ger or geiris is a tzaddik. That's our assumption because of the unbelievable move that they made to join the Tachas Kanfei Hashchin and take on the responsibility of being a Yid. We assume that they're tzaddikim, so they're included in Ala Tzaddikim. Why are you spelling out Geirim? So there's a famous Maharal that talks about this, and he says something that I think is a key to so many things in our life. He says that there's a huge similarity between tzaddikim and Geirim. They belong in the same sentence. There's a huge similarity. He says that tzaddikim, the mark of a tzaddik is that his life is not about this world. His life, his concern, his focus is on a spiritual world, is on his relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ultimately going to Asad Lavai, to Eilam Haba. His focus is not this world. The tzaddik doesn't spend that much time on his own physical life in this world because that's not where it's at. That's not where he's putting his investment. It's like going to a hotel for 2 days and trying to decorate it. Like, it's a ridiculous thing to do. You're leaving in 2 days. It's not an important part of it. It doesn't represent me. It's not mine. It's not like, there's no reason why I would want to decorate it. But, so tzaddikim, they use this world. It's like where they do the job. Imagine you're in construction and you're told to build a house. So you don't start living in that house. You have your own place that you live. You go there and you do the job of building the house, right? Tzaddikim are in this world like that. They're here, they're on the job site. But their makom, their place is with Hashem. That's their place, is with their Ruchnios, with HaKadosh Baruch. So that's tzaddikim. Didn't Gerim make the same move? Isn't that really the same idea of what a ger did? What's the statement that a ger makes? A ger says that even though I was born to the nations of the world, and to the nations of the world, this is their final and important world. They're Olam Hazeh people, right? They're here, to be happy and satisfied in this world. They're not working towards a world to come. The ger says, no, I don't want that. I don't want this world to be my main place. I want the next world to be my main place. I'm moving. The ger moved. Okay? He moved from Olam Hazeh to Olam Haba. Even while he's here in Olam Hazeh, but he moved where his focus is, where he truly lives. His perspective on the world changed from it being his permanent place to being his temporary place. I don't know if any of you had the experience of, some of you certainly had, of like deciding to move, right? When you decide to move, okay, you make that decision. So you start packing up the house, and you decided to move. Your relationship with the house starts to change, right? This is like not where my future lies anymore. We're leaving. So you might miss your old house, but in a certain sense, you've moved on. This is not my main makom. The ger does that while he's living here. The minute he comes out of the mikveh, he has his bris milah, he's declared that this is not his main, he's not living for this world anymore. Once he joined Klal Yisrael, he's living for a different world. And because of that, because of the similarity between the tzaddik and the ger, that the tzaddik lives for Olam Haba, and the ger transitioned from Olam Hazeh to Olam Haba, they all belong in the same bracha. And the truth is that you see it in the word ger. I think I've pointed this out before, but we call a convert a ger. It's quite an insulting name. Okay? I always bring up, Mrs. Feld, when we were by Crystal's Gerus, and afterwards, if you remember, the Dayanim gathered around her, and they apologized to her that they made it so hard for her to become Jewish. And they said, from now on, you are our sister. I don't know if you remember that. Said, Me'ata, they said, Lashon Kodesh, Me'ata achoseinu at. From now on, you are our sister. And you have to ask yourself, a ger means a stranger. So why would you call your sister a stranger? Shouldn't we call them our brothers? They shouldn't be called gerim, they should be called achim. Oh, this guy, he's an ach tzedek. He's a righteous brother. We shouldn't call him stranger. Why are we calling him stranger? Is that a strange thing? We call gerim strangers? And it goes very far, because when we talk about in Gemara, let's say the Gemara will talk about a slave that becomes free. So the Gemara will say, Eved shenishtachar, shichr means freedom. We'll say a slave that became free, right? We'll say a katan that was nisgadel, a katan that became a gada, okay? Do we say goish and nisgayer? Is there any place in Chazal where you find goish and nisgayer? Never. We only say gerish and nisgayer, which is it's not really 100% accurate. It's a guy that was nisgayer, but we say gerish and nisgayer. And the reason is because we don't want to mention the time that he was a guy. It's like out of respect for him. We don't mention that time. We just call him a ger. The fact that he was once a guy, that's not our job to remind him that he was once a guy. Now he's joined the royal family. We treat him as part of the royal family. And yet, we call him a stranger. The ahavtem es hager. You should love the stranger. Maybe don't call him a stranger. That would be step one in the love. No, what do we love the stranger? No, maybe don't treat you like a stranger. Like what's going on here? The answer is that it's the biggest compliment in the world that we're calling him a ger. Ger means that I'm not here permanently, right? Lagur means a temporary dwelling. The ger, the whole identity of the ger is that he said, I am not in this world permanently. This is not my world anymore. From now on, I am renting space here, but I do not live here. My place is the next world. It's the biggest compliment in the world. We should all be zeicha to be gerim like that. We should all be zeicha to be so not focused on our being settled here because we're focused on something bigger. That's the true godless of the ger. The godless, he's called a ger not because he's a stranger to us, but because he stopped from being a toishav in this world, from being that this is his main focus, his hatzlacha on this world, and he's focused on what comes after. That's his focus. So I want to just lean into that for a second, think about what that means, and then we can talk about what it means for us. When a ger does that, what is he doing exactly? He was born as a guy, okay? He was living in this world, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay? He's living in this world, the pursuit of happiness. And then at some point, he becomes inspired that there's more to life than that. And he discovers HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he feels this strong, almost indescribable, illogical push that he has to become a Yid. If anybody here knows any Gerim, you know that when they decided to become Jewish, it was a push coming from the depths of their neshama. And they're pushed towards Yiddishkeit. And no matter how many times we try to slow them down, they keep barreling forward because they're desperate to become a Yid. And then they become a Yid. And then they come home that day. What changed? What changed, really? They don't leave in different clothing. They don't, like what really changed? They still need to eat and drink. They still need to have a home. Like, what changed for them? So I'm just speaking out the obvious that what changed more than anything is their perspective about life, about what life means. Right? Everything comes out of that. They're not when they come out of the mikveh, when they walk out of the bezdin, now a yid, they're walking out into the same world. But is it really the same world? Or are they walking out into a world that they're understanding completely differently now? What in the past was the world that their entire future was in this world has just become a conduit to get to Olam Haba. So they're living in the same place, but the meaning of that place changed completely when they were Nizgayer. There's something to think about there. It's like a perspective change of what it really means. Have you ever had the discovery that someone who you thought was a wonderful, safe person and discover that they're not so safe or not so wonderful? Like you got to know them and you said no, that person's not healthy for me. Or the opposite, someone who you felt a little bit suspicious about, and you didn't feel like that person is healthy for you. But then over time, as the two of you matured, you realize, no, that's a good person for me. So that's a good example of same people, but the perspective changed. And when the perspective changes, everything changes. It's different now. And that's what happens to a ger. Like, he's living in the same world, but you can ask a ger or a gieris, it's not the same world anymore. Everything has changed. My whole purpose has changed. My focus has changed. What's important has changed. Everything has changed. And even though physically nothing changed, but the ger has the koyach, has the power to be able to transform the way he looks at the world, even though the world is not giving any clues that that's the case. But just from his own sense of things, he's able to change the way he looks at the world. And that's what I think we get from Avram Avinu. And I don't think we have to be Gerim to get that. Avram Avinu lived in a world he discovered on his own. He grew up in this world, this very physical world where everyone was being Oved Avodah Zarah. And, Chazal say that at 3 years old he was Hiker as Bayrei. But from what we understand, at 3 years old meant it was the beginning of the journey, because the Rambam says that Avram Avinu was Hiker as Bayrei when he was 40. So we know that there was a 37-year journey from the first seeds of his discovery until he was fully, in a sophisticated way, understood HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the world and the relationship between Hashem and his world. And Avram Avinu lived for those 37 years in the same world, with the same sky and earth and all of the issues and the whole metzius of the world. And over time, he managed to understand a reality of an Olam Haba, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Ruchnios that he couldn't see. And then Hashem spoke to him. But think about what it was before Hashem spoke to him. He was able to live in this world, and he had this power. This is our grandfather. He had the power to live in this world and to be able to imagine and to lean in and to trust himself that there is more to life than this world, and that there's a spiritual world, and things have spiritual meaning, and things have an impact in Shemayim, and there's a HaKadosh Baruch Hu who's watching us, and there's a HaKadosh Baruch Hu who's interested in us. And all of those things, Avram Avinu was able to be mamchish on his own, and that's why he's tchila legerim. He's the first one to make that transition. He's the first one. He was born in this world, and over the years of his life, from the time he was a young 3-year-old until he was 40 years old, and he had nevuah for the first time, Avram Avinu transitioned out of Olam Hazeh, step by step, brick by brick, thought by thought, until he realized, one second, no, this is not the end of the road. This is the beginning of the journey. The end of the road is with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you and I inherited that power from Avram Avinu. It's inside of us. It's wired into us. Which means that we don't have to be Gerim to understand that we have the ability to look at the world around us and to recognize that there's more there than meets the eye. And to understand that there's a ruchniistic world, and there's what's truly important, and what's not important, and that there's schar v'einish, and that there's, even in all the challenges and the pain and the difficulty that we go through in life, that there's a cheshbon for all of it. It doesn't go nowhere. That Hashem has a cheshbon for it. Hashem's keeping track. There's a scorecard somewhere that's keeping track. And that nothing happens for no reason. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't make mistakes. Do we see that around us at all? No. Around us, we see lots of questions. But us, grandchildren of Avram Avinu is why we're all brothers and sisters. Because Avram Avinu unites us. And us, children of Avram Avinu, grandchildren of Avram Avinu, we have an ability, which Baruch Hashem, we're pretty good at. That we could live in this world and appreciate the fact that there's more to life than just this world. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked with such simcha when Avram Avinu had emunah. Because Avram Avinu didn't just have emunah in his mind, like, oh yeah, Hashem said I'm going to have a son. I don't even know what that's like. I don't know how that could possibly be. But I guess Hashem said, I guess that's going to happen. No, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him he was going to have a child, in his mind, everything changed. Now he's having a child. It was pashut, 100% pashut to him, like the table right here in front of us. That's the level of his emunah. You believe that there's a table over here? You believe it? Right? You even trust one of your senses, because you're not even touching the table. Just one of your senses. You could see the table, you believe it's there. Okay, if you would touch it, hear it, you could smell it if you'd like. Okay? Use your other senses. I'm not going to tell you to taste it, but we use our senses, and even if one of our senses tells us something, we believe it's there. Sometimes it's raining outside. You could be in the middle of sleep, and you wake up and you hear the rain. You go, it's raining. And if someone would say, no, it's not, you would say, yes, it is. Because you know for sure, because what's in this world, what your senses pick up, are an absolute reality to you. Do we know that Mashiach is coming the same way we know that there's a table here? It's a little harder. Do we believe in Ruchnios the way that we can actualize, like mamashos, that there's a table here? That's a little bit of a step further. And that's the legacy that Avram Avinu leaves us. He's the first ger. He's the first person that was able to live in this world and create for himself an approach and a journey to be able to reach the next world. And he's the first person to say, this world, it's just the beginning of the journey. This is not where I wind up. This is not the end of the journey. And that's something that all of us need to do. Getting back to the order of the psukim, I don't want to leave that loose end. Getting back to the order of the psukim, Hashem was telling Avram to travel to Eretz Yisrael, but he was also telling him to travel away from all of the perspectives of the world around him, to not buy into the perspectives of the world around him, to disconnect himself from the false ideologies and thought processes of the world around him. And that meant really working hard to walk away from a thought process and a hashkafa that was not right. Now, the easiest thing is to walk away from your country. It's not easy, but it's the easiest of them all, because, everyone identifies with their country, but but I could leave my country. So the first thing he says, Lech lecha me'artzecha. But my city, my birthplace, that's where all my friends are. That's where my whole life is. That's where I went to school. That's where the people that I know are. That's a little bit harder for me to detach from all of that. That's the second step. Mimaylatcha, from your birthplace. Okay, I can detach from that, but my family, that's where I gained all my hashkafas from. My father Terach, he taught me everything I know. What a chinuch. That's Beis Avicha. No. Mi Beis Avicha. Separate even from your father's house. So that was it wasn't saying it in order of how it plays out. It was saying it in order of the depth of the connection. From your country, which is the least connection, to your birthplace, which is even a stronger connection, to your father's house, which is even the greatest connection, you have to separate from all of that to find a new reality. El ha'aretz asher areka, I'm going to bring you to Eretz Yisrael, a Ruchnios land, where there's a journey to Eretz Yisrael, where there's a journey to Hashras Hashchina, where there's a journey to a relationship with Hashem. That's, I think, our job. Our job and what we get from Avram Avinu, and our responsibility, because we're children of Avram Avinu, is to live in a Ruchniistic world, even while we live here. To be in what Rav Wolbe calls it Lichyois b'mishar ruchni, to live on a spiritual plane, to value the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu values. I mentioned this to some of you at a different opportunity, but I want to speak out because this is something that's going to be in the news in the next few days. So I want to speak it out because it's important, and that is that tomorrow in Yerushalayim, all the Bnei Torah in Yerushalayim are going out to march tomorrow. They're going out for an Atzeres Tefillah because of the fact that Bachram are being thrown in jail because they're not signing up to go to the army. And there's going to be a massive, massive, massive turnout of all B'nai Torah. And the Mayetzes Gedolei HaTorah sent out a notice that even here in America we should be davening with them. And this challenge that Klal Yisrael is facing with the draft is exactly what we're talking about today. Exactly. Because you know very well, and some of you may even be confused about this and have misgivings about it, and it wouldn't be surprising or an indication of anything wrong with you if you wonder about this. But like the argument of the secular government in Eretz Yisrael, the argument is there are kids out there putting their lives on the line to protect Klal Yisrael. Why shouldn't everyone do that? It's a very good argument. It's a very, very good argument. And now, all the Bachrim in Eretz Yisrael, and all the young Galite in Eretz Yisrael, and all the working people in Eretz Yisrael are all going out to march that the Yeshiva Bachrim should not be sent out to go to the army. Does that make you a little uncomfortable? Why should they not go to the army? Shouldn't they protect Achenu B'nai Yisrael? Shouldn't they go to the army? And this is a tough issue for some people. And, in America, we're kind of, trying not to talk about it so much, which is a mistake, but we're trying not to talk about it so much. And there's two levels here. It's a very, very, very complex issue. And I would be lying if I told you that I fully understand the issue. There's a lot of parts to it that I don't think that we have a full understanding of. But there's two stages to this that I want to bring up that have to do with what I spoke about tonight. And they're nagea to us in our private lives as well, but let me just mention this, because tomorrow, if you have any connection to any kind of social media or yeshiva world or anything, it's going to be all over the place. And I think it's worth speaking about. And it's two steps that I want to mention. Step number one is that ever since we were makabel the Torah on Har Sinai, almost 4,000 years ago, we have been taught from the Torah itself and from all those that come after that to trust our Gedolim. And this is an area where Gedolei Yisrael are as unanimous as we've seen. From all over, Sfardim, Ashkenazim, Hasidim, Litvish, all over. There's a tremendous, tremendous achdus amongst the Gedolim. And this is what they're telling us. That they're telling us that it's absolutely can't be that the Yeshiva Bachim should be sent to the army. And even if I do not understand why that could be true, I'm going to say more in a minute, but just to hear me out. Even if I do not understand how that could be true, if the Gedolim tell me to march, I march. If the Gedolim tell me that this is important, I know it's important. Because that's who we are. We're people that follow our leaders. We've learned the lesson the hard way, and we've learned the lesson in a beneficial way many, many, many times over history, starting with Mordechai HaTzadik telling us not to go to the Suda of Achashverosh. And if the Gedolei Yisrael, who've spent their entire lives learning Torah, who are sensitive to the needs of every Yid, who cry for every soldier that falls, who are involved in trying to be Makarav Yidden, and all of them are saying this, the truth is I don't fully need to understand. I just need to know that this is what the Gedolim are saying to do, and I'm happy to go along and to do it. But let's go a little bit deeper. And a little bit deeper is that there's a certain reality that it's not visible, that the Gedolim are living with because they live b'misha ruchni, they live in a spiritual plane. And in their minds, the Israeli army has accomplished miraculous things over the last few decades, correct? Mm-hmm. Right? Absolutely miraculous, And Eretz Yisrael has had a miraculous thing, I think I pointed out a few months ago that if another nation sends missiles to Eretz Yisrael, if one of them hits, we're surprised. We're the only country in the entire world where if a missile hits, we're like, how did that happen? They're all supposed to miss. If one of them hits the mark, if one of them hits the mark, we're surprised. Why are we surprised? Because I was around, I don't know if you were, but some of you were, by the Gulf War when Saddam Hussein was sending Scuds to Eretz Yisrael, and he sent like 39 or something, like a crazy number of Scuds, and over the entire time, one person died. It's crazy. And we're like, one person died? That's terrible. And it's true, because to us, what went wrong? We're fully protected by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When Iran attacked a few months ago, they hit a building, and there were injuries. People were injured and people died. Okay, it was almost nothing compared to what they tried to do, but they keep trying to destroy Klal Yisrael, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu keeps protecting us. Hashem keeps catching the missiles. But one of them hit, and we're like, how could one of them hit? How could that be? Do you understand how crazy it is? We are used to miracles. We're accustomed to it. It's normal to us that a little tiny country, you look at it on a map, it's a little tiny country, you can miss it. This little tiny country is more powerful than every other country, and nobody could destroy it as hard as they try. And it's pasha to us. Why is it pasha to us? Because we understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is protecting us. And what the Gedolei Yisrael are telling us is that there's a direct correlation to the fact that Eretz Yisrael is being protected, to the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of people learning Yom V'Layla in Eretz Yisrael. That is a connection. An army could fail. Okay? 9/11 happened to the most powerful country in the world. Armies can fail. Disasters can happen. Do you know how many terrorist attacks are thwarted We probably don't even hear about all of them, and even the ones we hear about is mind-boggling, one after another. The amount of death and decimation that could have happened had HaKadosh Baruch Hu not been watching us is mind-boggling. You think it's all because we like a bunch of G.I. Joe superhero soldiers? That's a myth? That's the myth of the that's what the secular world has done to the Chashmonaim, right? We're going to head towards Hanukkah soon, right? So the Chashmonaim have become like this super small elite group of soldiers that beat the entire Greek army, but that's not really what happened. Really, it was a bunch of yeshiva guys from the yeshiva with a bunch of young Galite that went out who were like, how do you hold a gun? From which side? And they're the ones that won. Because the Torah protects. It's a mistake. You know what we did? The Maccabim, the big muscles. There's no big muscles, okay? They were surviving on Cocoa Pebbles. They were eating, they were learning 3 starim a day, okay? Their exercise consisted of trying to pick up above a basra, okay? That was their exercise. This was not the superhero Maccabim. That's not what it was. And today, the IDF, they're wonderful. They're amazing. They're Meiser Nefesh. We have such a karas hatov to them. But they are human beings who train for 2 years or for 3 years, and they go out there, and the reason why their bullets hit their mark is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends it to their mark. And we love them, and we are grateful to them, and we daven for them, and we cry for them. And when one is taken, it's a tragedy for all of us. But what the Gedolei Yisrael are telling us is that their protection is Yeshivas Mir in Yerushalayim. Their protection is the yeshivas in Bnei Brak, is Panavish in Bnei Brak, is Chevron. That's their protection. That's the armor that they're going with, because there are so many Gemaras and Rashis and Tosfos and Rashbas and Ritvas and Rambans and Rans and Pnei Yeshuas and Chasam Seifers and Briskarovs and Reb Chaims and all of that. All of that is an armor around them, is a shield around them. And if you pull the boys out of yeshiva, you're taking away your own shield. That is what they are telling us. And that is what our Messiah tells us. And that is Ein Shmirah Ka-Torah, we sang on Simchas Torah. There is no Shmirah like the Torah. There's nothing in the world, there's no iron dome in the world that's more powerful than our boys sitting and learning Torah. And I'm just pointing out, I'm not trying to use this Dvar Torah as an excuse to say what I'm saying. The truth is, I didn't really want to talk about this. But I feel compelled to talk about it because this is what, do you realize at this point that I just spoke about, this is what's at stake here. Are you looking at the world as if there's no Ruchnios? Then you see it one way. Are you looking at the world with the impact of the spiritual dimension of the world? Then you look at the world completely differently. If there's a guy sitting in a Chassidish yeshiva on Shmuel HaNavi learning Masechta Hayrius or something, if you're looking just with physical eyes, he has nothing to do with helping any protection. He's stam a guy who woke up in the morning, went to the mikveh, davened shachris, and sat down with his hayrius. That's who he is. But if you mature your eyesight, if you allow yourself to see more, you know that that guy is protecting people. There was this idea brought up on October 7th, happened to connect each Ben Torah who's learning with a soldier. So like each one has their soldier that they're like learning for and davening for. And ultimately, some yeshivas did it, but some didn't do it because we don't know Hashem's cheshbainis, and you could have a very, very pure and special yeshiva bach who's learning day and night, and the soldier could not survive, and it would psychologically damage this guy for the rest of his life that his soldier died. And that's a valid concern, and that's why many places didn't do it. But the concept is really emes. The concept is emes. Except that one yeshiva bachar could probably protect a number of soldiers, because the power is incredibly powerful. And yes, there are a lot of people that slip through the cracks, and yes, not everyone is learning as much as they should, and yes, the system isn't perfect, and yes, there are people who take advantage of it. We live in a messy world. It's a messy world. But it doesn't take away from the deep truths of that world. And that's what I want to point out, that, I know that sometimes people feel queasy about this, and that's my job sometimes, to speak about the things that people feel queasy about. But we proudly defend that yeshiva bachrim should not be put in jail together with drug dealers and murderers and thieves to put a boy in jail there because he learns Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos. That's not a crime. That should be the biggest pride of Klal Yisrael, and even the secular government knew it for so many years and appreciated it. There's no greater crown that we have is that our boys and our Yungalite, and when we say Yungalite in Eretz Yisrael doesn't mean they're so young. Okay, everyone my age in Eretz Yisrael is sitting and learning, and they have been for years, for decades. The level of knowledge of Torah in Eretz Yisrael is breathtaking. The amount that the average person, the average guy in shul knows is breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking. It's another level. Kutshim, Tyrus, the halacha, the amount of svarim that are being printed daily, weekly, by Talmidei Chachamim there. It's just like, it's unbelievable. You could fill your entire house with the svarim that were printed this year. The amount of scholarship, the amount of work, the amount of editing, the amount of thinking again, of erasing, of rewriting, of clarifying. It's unbelievable the amount of work that's going on into this incredible endeavor of learning the Torah Hashem and understanding Hashem's Torah and bringing Hashem's Torah into our families and into our lives. So I think it's an Avram Avinu moment for us. Are we going to look at the world and say, yeah, I know Torah is great, but come on, practically. That sentence that I just said, Avram Avinu spent his whole life fighting against that. No. Practically, there's an Olam Haba. You want to know practically? There's a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Practically, if we learn his Torah, we'll be protected. Ein Shmirah ka Torah. That's practically. And that's the kayach that we have. I'll just end with the famous story that we've said. We've said this before, but it's just appropriate to end with the story that there were once a bunch of maskilim in Europe that wanted to put on a skit to make fun of the Gedolei Yisrael and to make fun of the Torah. So in the Torah, there's a whole process of how to send soldiers to war. So the Kayin Mashuach Milchama gathers together all of the soldiers and he starts sending home. Anyone who got married this year should go home. Anyone who built a house this year should go home. Anyone who planted a vineyard this year should go home. Anyone who's afraid should go home, which Chazal say mean afraid because they did Averis. And then finally, whoever's left goes to war. So these maskilim, they made a play. I'm sure most of you know the story, but it's worth repeating. And they had a stage full of people, and they started announcing, this should go home, this should go home, this should go home. And by the time they announced everyone who's afraid should go home, who was left? I forgot exactly who it was, like Reb Chaim Volozhin, Reb Chaim Brisker maybe, and Chafetz Chaim, and Reb Chaim Oizer or something. Like there were like 3 Gedolim left on the stage to go fight the war. That was the joke. That was the making fun of our Torah and our Chachamim. And when one of the Gedolim was told about this play, he was like, so where's the final scene? The final scene is that, and then they won the war. That's the final scene, because Klal Yisrael doesn't need soldiers. Klal Yisrael doesn't need we need HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shomer Yisrael, Shmar She'eres Yisrael, V'al Yoivad Yisrael, L'Oimrim Shema Yisrael. We need a Klal Yisrael that's serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And of course, practically speaking, we have to do our hishtadlus, and we have to protect ourselves, and that's in Shulchan Aruch. It's not stama. It's in Shulchan Aruch that we have to protect ourselves. There are halachas in Shulchan Aruch of what to do on Shabbos if there's a city and people are threatening the city. When could you be Mechal Shabbos? When not to be Mechal Shabbos? And the halachas talk about going out to fight. There's such a thing as going out to fight. But it's important to know that is the hishtadlus. But the Shmirah comes from every single word, every word of Aleph Beis, from these little kids that are sitting in Cheder and learning Aleph Beis, to their grandfathers who are sitting in a Beis Medrash somewhere having learned for 60, 70 years straight. Could you imagine? There are thousands of people in Israel that have learned for over 50 years. Just imagine what that means. So that's the real world. And that, I think, is a very Parshas Lech Lecha Nekuda, to live with the reality of Ruchnios. Ruchnios is a reality. The Shmirah of Torah is a reality. The Ha'emin B'Hashem. Avram Avinu believed like it was right in front of him. It's an absolute reality. And let's try to take that into our own lives. When we teach our children things about Yiddishkeit, to teach it with the passion, with emunah. When we think ourselves about difficult things that we go through, to recognize, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with me. There's a cheshbon. I want to point out that Avram Avinu went to Eretz Yisrael, and because he believed in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. and he left his land, and he left his birthplace, and he left his father's house, and he went to Eretz Yisrael, and what happened? There was a hunger. Showed up, there was a hunger. No, it's not. There's no fantasy like Avraham Avinu who believed in Hashem, and everything was just like, roses, like everything was just one. No, he showed up in Eretz Yisrael finally. He was like, oh, now we have to leave. There's a hunger. And Avraham Avinu had something that we need to learn, which is that even when things were difficult, he knew HaKadosh Baruch Hu still loves him. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still with him. And sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a gzeira that's difficult, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu never leaves us, and that's a reality. That's the reality, and if we could live in that reality, it could be transformative for our lives, for the simcha in our lives, and the bitachon in our lives, to not be stressed. Why is Hashem doing this to me? I could trust. There's a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a reason for everything. Hashem loves me. Hashem is holding my hand. And Mirz Hashem, we should be zeicha to Yeshua's Be'ezer Hashem. Shekayach.
Thank you.